Thank you very much. I'm very sorry everyone had to wait that long. It's very embarrassing for me. I was sitting on a runway thinking, would people wait for me? And secretly I was hoping people wouldn't, because then I wouldn't have to feel embarrassed by it all. But on the way I was told something that very ironically made me feel good. So I now have something in common. I may not quite have the intellectual largesse of Mr. C.K. Prahlad, but I have something else in common with him. We both get late on flights and come to these functions late. So while I may not quite have anything else in common with the great man, at least there's something else. There's just one other thing. I'm a little embarrassed by, I sometimes don't quite know where to look when people stand in front and say nice things about me. Most of those are come out of biodata, but Mukesh bhai, please, the word sir is something I'm not used to, because I've got professors sitting here in front of me. They were more entitled to that. Mr. Bhogle was always my father. Even now people say Mr. Bhogle and look around to see if my dad's behind me. But I'm always Harsha, so I've always been that. In fact, when I first got my admission letter to this place, because in Gujarat, Harsha doubles up as a girl's name as well, my admission letter actually was addressed to MS Harsha Bhogle. And I wrote back to the SAC coordinator here saying, I don't know how many hearts I'm breaking, but there's a guy coming up, fellas. Anyway, so thank you very much. I'm not sure I'm quite the perfect person to sit here and talk about excellence. I'm only a sports broadcaster, and there's very often life shows up the littleness of what you do, and what's happened in Mumbai in the last 3 or 4 days shows up the littleness of cricket in our lives, and people who sit in front of a camera and talk about cricket, which is really all that I do. But I must tell you something related to what Mukesh bhai said. I was in Amritsar very early in my career once, and I saw this banner which tended to follow me around everywhere I went, and it said, Harsha brings Varsha. So it's something I've got used to, and you won't believe this. Today when I called up Jet Airways to ask if my flight was on time, the girl at the other end said, thank you for calling Jet Airways Varsha here. And I said, here we go again. I must confess, I'm a little gauche at most times, but I have a feeling of inadequacy while standing. By the way, if you're standing, there's lots of room on the steps. So please feel free. I'll feel more at home if you sit on the steps, because that's what I did quite often. So don't worry. I have a great feeling of inadequacy standing here, because to me, I came to IIMA, and if you'll pardon me just a couple of minutes to talk about IIM Ahmedabad, because that's something that's very, very special to me. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. I was not sure of what I was getting into. I came from a very soft engineering course. I didn't know what I was getting into when I came here. And in my first 4 or 5 months, I was filled with awe. Believe me, till I came in here, I thought getting into IIM Ahmedabad would be the biggest thing I ever did in life. In my first 6 months, I realized that getting out was probably going to be bigger than getting in. And I remember at the end of my first term, and I'm waiting to meet Professor Dholakia, because he gave me a D in my eco paper, luckily the only one I got, and entirely justifiable, because I don't know what I wrote. I met Professor T.V. Rao that evening, and we were just coming out of the NR, and he took one look at me. He knew my mother, so I was always at my best behavior with him. And he said, are you all right? And I said, no, actually I don't think I am. But I had a great sense of awe about coming to IIM Ahmedabad. But it did something else to me. As a PGP1, IIM Ahmedabad was terrible. It was terrible for me, not that the institute was terrible, it was terrible for me because I didn't know what to do here. I came here and I thought everybody in the world is better than me at everything in the world. And quietly when I sat down in my room, I realized that was true, which made it even worse. My second year here was still in all the years of my life the finest year I've ever had, because I left this place aware of the fact that for all the inadequacies I perceived in myself, IIM Ahmedabad could accept me for who I was. And that was a huge feeling. Somebody suggested, why doesn't this guy become a combo captain? And I said, wow. And by the time I left, there was a girl who thought I was okay enough to want to spend the rest of her life with me. And till today, my father thinks that's the best thing I did at IMA. Out of respect, I don't disagree. Right. But I learned a lot here, and I always feel very emotional coming back here. And to do so in an auditorium like this, which didn't even exist then, but in an audience like this, I'm feeling a bit small, so just stay with me for a while. I'll warm up in course of time. I've even done that with Sidhu, so I can do that today. I'll talk not so much about excellence as I have had the opportunity, but from what I've seen around me, and over the last 2 or 3 years, through the opportunity that's been afforded to me by my profession to speak to some of India's top corporates on learnings from sport. I don't claim to know corporate India very well, but I do talk about learnings from sport. And while talking about learnings from sport, I also follow one of the earliest advice I ever got, which was to keep my mouth shut and my ears open. And you can see how well I followed that. And so I'm going to talk about excellence from all that I've allowed to come into my system over the years. The first, of course, is a perennial debate between what's more important, the end or the path. And I can understand why a lot of people believe that the end is crucial, because the end is often a driver of ambition. We always set ourselves these result goals and we want to get there at all costs. And the end is something that we look up to. It gives us that goal, it gives us the vision. And that end can sometimes be the driver of ambition. And heaven knows most people come to this institute and most people go out of this institute, and a lot of people who are also part of the AMA are people with great ambition, and ambition needs a driver. That's what I keep telling my son, though he doesn't believe in it. But ambition needs a driver, and sometimes the ends are in themselves the drivers of those ambition. But I've discovered over the years, and it's happened to me, and I've seen that with a lot of people in sport. I'm not quite sure it happens in corporate life, but I've seen that in sport, especially in cricket, that having those kind of result goals, end goals, rather than journey or passage goals. When I say end versus path, I'm really talking journey versus destination. Most of us love the destination. As we grow older, as we see a little bit more of life, we realize it's the destination that counts for as much, if not more, than the journey. And I've discovered that the end at all costs attitude that pervades a lot of us these days is a source of great anxiety. It adds anxiety to our system. It adds more turbulence. One of the few things I remember from studying engineering was entropy. It adds to the degree of entropy in the system, the degree of turbulence in the system. Because the end starts to choke you after a while. Because if you can't get to the end, then getting to the end at all costs becomes so important that you forget that we need to exist for today as well. We're forever in search of that end. For me, at IIM Ahmedabad, that end was passing out with my head held high. And in my first year, I spent more time trying to figure out what grade I needed to get, rather than studying, which would have allowed me to get that grade in the first place. But I've also seen with a lot of young people that they set themselves these goals. They say, I must get 500 runs in this series, or I must score 300s in this series. And getting those 500 runs or getting those 300s then starts becoming, rather than an ambition, a great source of anxiety. And that can sometimes choke them. When Sandy Gordon, who was a psychologist at the university in Australia and worked with the Indian cricket team, met some of our youngsters, Yuvraj Singh told him he was getting very anxious about the fact that he wasn't scoring hundreds. And they worked together to give him a different set of goals. And he said, if you're batting at number 6, why don't you set your goal as being not out at the end of the innings and playing a winning role, rather than choking yourself by scoring hundreds? It does one other thing, and that is it provides, putting the result first, putting the end at all costs attitude, creates a temptation to do whatever it takes to win. And sometimes when we start to walk down that path of taking whatever it takes to win, we don't always check whether the path that we are following is the right one. It's fraught with danger. And too often we tend to go down that path. It's a classic question that presents itself here as well, isn't it? Of all the things, there are many things I admire about IIM Ahmedabad, but the thing that grates the most, not about this institute, but about the public perception of this institute, is what kind of salaries are students getting out of this place. I get the feeling that business schools and business newspapers are all that they care about IIM Ahmedabad is what is the highest starting salary, what is the average starting salary, and on a plot, if you plot a graph, where does 2005 starting salary compare with 2004? And where does it compare with 2003? And thank God, not where it compares with 1985. But we don't come here for a starting salary. That will be putting the end first. People come here to build careers. They don't come here to earn a starting salary. If you come here to earn a starting salary, you've already taken the first wrong foot in life. We come here to build careers. And I know of no human being in this world who's built a great career for himself and has thought, where's my next check coming from? And yet, there are people who go in search of that check, and by 35, 38, they're saying, hang on, did I do right? So next time someone comes from a newspaper and tells you, so what starting salary are you expecting? Please stand up to your full height and say, I don't care. Because honestly, if you're from IMA, you needn't care. But that's a classic situation, I think, of putting the ends before the journey. Say, I'm here to build a career. On one of my first tours to Australia, I was working my backside off. And honestly, I think the fastest path to excellence is to work your butt off. Not necessarily to work every day in office till 9 o'clock at night, but try and work as hard as you can and do the best you can. And I wanted to do cricket commentary. And the Australian Broadcasting Corporation would not pay me for it because I was the overseas broadcaster. And the convention is that the overseas broadcaster is paid by his station. My station was All India Radio. They didn't even know I was going. So there was no question of being paid by them. So I used to write 2 newspaper reports a day, one for the afternoon papers, one for the night paper. There used to be video magazines then. You know, you didn't have, it was still 91, 92. I mean, the World Wide Web was 5 years ago. That's how antique we are talking about. And so at the end of every test match, I'd write for a magazine, I'd get that translated into Marathi, write for a Marathi magazine, I'd do all this. But my biggest perk was I would host columns for the 3 cricket captains. And it gave me a great opportunity of meeting twice in every test match, of sitting with Alan Border for 15, 20 minutes. And he said something I tell every young Australian cricketer. He said, I always tell them, take care of the runs and the dollars will take care of themselves. And I think that's something every management student, or indeed every practicing manager, must frame and put up. The path to excellence is through runs, not through dollars. And I've seen too many examples of outrageously talented young Indian cricketers who chase the dollar, or given the way the dollar is going, maybe we should say chase the rupee because it's getting stronger, isn't it? Who chased the rupee and lost the runs. And I think in a sense that to me is what excellence is about. Excellence is chasing your performance goals and letting the result take care of itself. In fact, in Australia, there are a lot of coaches now who are starting to say, make the process of achievement supreme and make the result irrelevant. The Australian cricket coach says that, the Australian swimming coach says that, and the idea being you perfect the process of performance and don't allow the pressure of the result to choke your performance. And to me, that's a wonderful journey on the path to excellence. Because very often we have no control over what is coming our way. If you're a swimmer in lane 4, if you're an Olympic swimmer, you're on the last 8, right? It's the big day. Maybe there's Ian Thorpe, there's Grant Hackett on one side, there's the Dutch swimmer whose name I can never pronounce on the other side, and there's Michael Phelps on the other side. I'm making an admission here because every kid in my school quiz knows the name front and back and knows the coach and the coach's wife and the aunt as well. Now there's a swimmer in lane 4. The swimmer has got absolutely no control over what the swimmer in lane 5 is going to do. No control over what the swimmer in lane 1 is going to do. All he has control over is what he is going to do. If he keeps worrying about what the swimmer in the next lane is doing, then he is preventing himself from performing as well as he can. And they believe, and I believe from the little sport that I have seen, that matches are won or lost not because another team plays better, but because a team doesn't play as well as it can. And I have great faith in that theory of making the result irrelevant. Do the best you can and take what you get. And actually, if you see what Australian sports scientists and managers are saying today, it's no different from what your grandmother told you. She told you, karmanyavadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Don't worry about the fruit. And I think that is the path to excellence. And that's something I have seen. You know, it's funny that every time I've done something because I've loved doing it, and I said, yeah, I love doing this. Let me go and do it to the very best I can. You really can't do more than that. Do it to the very best you can. And I've got paid more than I think I should have. I never told them that, but I got paid more than I thought I should have. And every time I've told myself, yeah, this looks like easy money, let me do it. It hasn't happened, or something's gone wrong somewhere. And I keep getting this feeling that there's something telling me, listen, don't worry about the ends. Just do your job as well as you can. And that's something I've believed in for a long time. One of the other problems also of putting the ends before the means is this whole question of ethics. And the more you see in public life what's happening, the more you read the front pages of newspapers today, the more you wonder if that beautiful 6-letter word has been banned by people who have control over our lives. I remember being in this, one of the things I remember in my first year course was Professor Mote one day shutting the MSM1 course and talking to us for half an hour on ethics. I didn't score too well in MSM1, but that thing remained for a long time. And I think adherence to ethics allows you to put the end where it deserves to be and concentrate on the path. When we seek excellence, as I said, very often we seek excellence in results, but I'm convinced that excellence exists in the performance as well, even more so in the preparation. And great teams become great because they excel in their preparation. What you see on the ground is just the end result of all that's gone in before. And that is why they are telling themselves, set yourself performance goals, not result goals. When you set yourself performance goals, when you're batting in the nets, you're still trying to get better. In the nets, you can't score 122 from 108 balls, but you can still bat as well as you want, as well as you can. You can still learn to give every ball 100%. And that's something that I've discovered over the years, that if you give every moment 100%, and then wait for the next moment and say, you know what, this is the moment I wanted to give 100% to, and then the next moment turns up and you say, actually, this was the moment I really wanted to give everything I could, then you find that the little things in life that make the difference between good and great just happen. And sometimes we talk of more than 100%. A lot of my friends in cricket talk about giving 110% and 120%. Sometimes, nowadays even that's not good enough. It's almost like adding V's before VIPs these days. And they want to give 200%. And I tell them, and they don't understand, of course, I say, thank God you didn't meet Professor Mote. Because he would have come and prostrated himself in front of you and said, you cannot score more, you cannot do more than 100%. I tried telling them, I mean, if you had a 1-liter Pepsi bottle, can you fill 2 liters in it? So why are we unhappy with 100%? I mean, we can't give more than 100%, but if we can give 100% every time, then you really can't do more than that. And that is what performance goals are talking about. You give 100% and take the result as it comes to you. And that's what the Quran says as well, doesn't it? That the Lord will help those that give their best every single time, not those that crave something for themselves. And if you give 100% every time and you lose, you can go to sleep aware that you gave your best. If it wasn't good enough, you take your hat off to your opponent and say, well done guys, you're better than me today. There's no shame in saying, well done, you're better than me. You want to beat your opponent, you will do everything it takes ethically to beat that opponent. But if the opponent is better than you, it's not a matter of shame. I mean, if I'm bowling to Adam Gilchrist and he hits me for 34 runs in an over, it's not a matter of shame, is it? But if you know to yourself that you've given 100%, then you sleep well. And say, I'll try harder and come back. That's what the great teams do. The not so great teams say we lost because of pollution, otherwise we could have given 100%. Or as the Indian hockey team loves to say, we lost because of the umpires. Let me tell you some of the things we learned in mathematics when we were studying early on was A union B and A intersection B. Indian hockey and excellence, if Indian hockey is A and excellence is B, A intersection B is a null set. And the reason is when we lose, we seek excuses. Excellence never, never, never seeks excuses.